Hello and welcome to the Cash News Podcast, your go-to source for informative conversations about all things cash and currency. From cash security and payments technology to the cash supply chain, we're here to share insights on the issues shaping the world of cash today. Join your hosts, Tom Meehan, Sean Ferrari, and Brad Moody as they dive into the latest trends, strategies, and technology. This is the Cash News Podcast. Now, here's Tom, Sean, and Brad.
Hey everybody, good to be chatting with you again. Sean here this week, along with my illustrious co-host here, Brad. Hello.
Hey everybody, great to see you, Sean. Hope all is well and you had a great vacation.
I did, thank you. Vacation was good. Always good to have a little time off during the summer and see what's happening. Was traveling around Europe a little bit and seeing all of the different uses of cash and electronic payments over there. Always good to see what's being used out there. Went through a fair amount of cash, so I can still say it is being used with regularity.
And as we always said, it's unscripted. And I'm curious because when I go to England, you can't spend a note to save your life, right? Nothing, everything's tap and go. But you go to Germany, and if you don't have euros in your hand, that's a problem. And then when we were in Paris for New Year's, God, that sounds so arrogant and entitled. But we also saw the same thing. Like some places were only tap and go in Paris, but then we went to Strasbourg, France, and everything was cash. Like you had to have cash. So it's an interesting. I don't know about your experiences that you saw while you were traveling.
Yeah, no, it definitely does vary. I mean, we were down in kind of the Mediterranean area, so Spain, Italy, France as well. And I would say that, we were able to use both, I'd say, very easily. People gladly took cash. There were a few cash-only establishments we were in, and there were also quite a few card-only establishments we were in. So it was interesting in the sense that not only could you use both, but different stores in different localities had definitely made kind of a choice between even choosing one or the other, which is
right.
a little different than what we see here in the U.S. Usually folks can spend either or depending where you are, cash only. But it's, I think we'll get into that a little bit later in terms of choice. But it was, I think the EU is definitely an interesting area. A lot of folks lump it together, and you can't really do that. Each country has its very own cultural traditions, obviously, and also thoughts on cash and payments use. So it's different.
Yeah, absolutely.
On that, I think, we were going to talk about a couple things today. One of the things was going to be some kind of takeaways from our currency conference that we held in Bangkok back almost, probably 2 months ago at this point, but we haven't really talked about it yet. So I thought I'll highlight a little bit of the takeaways there. They kind of go on the theme we were just talking about, and then we'll talk a little bit more about cash choice. So for folks that are interested, we held the currency conference at the end of May in Bangkok, and it's one of our larger events. It's our flagship currency event for the year, and we had a really good turnout this year. We've kind of seen the rebound from COVID. We had 60 central banks, which in terms of geographic and global coverage is really, really good. It's one of the largest, if not the largest, gathering of central banks since COVID that we know of in terms of in the cash industry, getting together all in one place, talking about stuff. So that was great. It had a lot of good regional and global representation. 166 organizations were there, 417 delegates. So we were back to kind of that pre-COVID strength of the event, which was great. And then, the main themes we really focused on was, cash in this changing environment, and really focused on sustainability, circulation trends, and different models for that. The impact of new technologies, whether that's AI or quantum, and really the complementary nature of cash and digital payments. We spent a lot of time talking about digital payments as well while we were there. We ran the digital currency conference in tandem with it. And I'd say one of the main takeaways was for sure that rather than think of digital payments and digital currencies as a threat to cash and as something that's supplanting it, most places now are really seeing the complementary role of cash and digital payments. Even in countries that have actively sought to move to a digital payment system and get rid of cash, they're seeing that there are specific use cases and specific segments of the population, and not only contingency, but that's a big one, but other reasons why there's a subset of spending that will continue to be cash. And I would say there was kind of a cautionary tale that was told in several cases of, you need to make sure that there is this infrastructure that exists, that the armored carriers still take it, that that there's people to service ATM machines, that there's banks continue to deposit, that just basically that there's a whole cash cycle that continues to exist even when the volumes get really low. So, make sure there's not too much consolidation down to a single CIT provider that controls the whole market, or which is
not uncommon, right?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, exactly. And then what happens? How do you, as a central bank, that since we had so many central banks there, the discussion was, as a central bank, how do you ensure resiliency in this kind of, in some areas, declining market, right? Like, how do you make sure that exists? But the one theme that Mark Gould from the Fed kind of did use in his keynote that kept resonating throughout the event was kind of this human connection, and cash was commonly referred to as a physical handshake. That was how he did it. Like, there's, it's so impersonal to just do electronic payments. You don't really think about it. You just send it, away it goes, and what have you. Whereas with cash, you're actually making that handoff to somebody else. There is that actual connection, and it sounds trivial, but when you really think about it, that's what a lot of the it goes hand in hand with how we think about currency designs and how we think about its use. We spend a lot of time thinking about how do we make the images talk about a culture, talk about a country, talk about shared history, talk about even wildlife or natural images. There's this like inherent cultural and art and just kind of I don't know, this hallmark connection, right, with a country and its currency that you lose when you go to a physical nature. And some of the more successful CBDC programs that we've seen out there in terms of digital currency have tried to replicate that, right, where they've made interfaces on the phone and experiences that make it more like a handshake or that make it look.
It's different when it's in your hand. It's so much.
Exactly. Yeah, so we tried to talk, or we did talk quite a bit about that. It kept coming up, and even a lot of the commercial banks that were in the room and that we talked about it with, and also a lot of the suppliers that were in the room, we all kind of kept going back to that and saying that it's not just when the power goes out, you need a way to make transactions. It's also there's just this kind of inherent use case and connection when somebody uses currency that we don't want to be so quick to just dismiss. So it's not, there are needs for sure for digital payments. You can't necessarily do a physical handshake when you're buying something on Amazon, or it's very inconvenient. There are ways, I guess, to do it, but it's easy and convenient to use a digital payment for especially online purchases and what have you. But there's also the complementary need and desire to use cash. So we had a lot of discussion around that. And then I'd say the other, I mentioned systemic risk and so forth. So there was a lot of discussion on that. Financial inclusion. Again, I think that was one of the discussions there was really some of the ways that, particularly in Thailand, some of the commercial banks were looking to, use more, again, of the digital entry into the financial system to help with the financial inclusion aspect, but a definite recognition that, the unbanked and underbanked and particularly the more rural areas still need cash. And again, sometimes a degree of digitalization is key there as well, to help those areas get on to the digital platforms and make digital payments and move money faster and all those things that digital payments can help with. So again, kind of that complementary aspect of things. Yeah.
But you didn't hear of anything where the countries were wanting to, I say the word outlaw cash, but that's not the spirit of what they're incorporating, right? They're just saying, hey, this is another method to spend within the countries. Yeah.
Yeah, by and large. I mean, the ones that have gone the farthest in terms of, not that they've tried to outlaw it, but tried to displace cash have been kind of, again, the Scandinavian experiences, right?
Yeah.
Where they've really kind of pushed to go electronic. But they're even the ones now that are saying, okay, again, you can get down to a certain lower level, but then you have to make sure there is still an infrastructure in place. And that's where I think a lot of times that when folks look at the U.S., and I think it's baffling to me and others at times that we don't necessarily see more of an eating away of the cash usage, given all the different digital alternatives. But I think, when you look at, again, it strikes me that when you look at the percentages of cash use, again, you mentioned Germany, right? Germany and even the UK, but before it went to kind of tap and go type things in the UK, they had very high cash use, like percentages.
Mm-hmm.
70, 80% cash use. Very high. US is around 15, 20%. And we've kind of been in that range for a while now, leading a lot of folks to think we're kind of at the floor there in terms of percentages, right? So it's that, we're not seeing these declines, and you saw huge declines in the UK. But again, they were very quickly, because there was a technology that was put in place that assisted people do things quicker and faster. And so it dropped again from 60-70% use. I don't know what it is now, but again, down, it had a long way to go to get to this 15-20% line, right? So it's not like, again, cash is going away. I think it's just finding this new equilibrium. And again, you would think, and a lot of the Fed's work on their diary studies and so forth have looked at this, that if it was going to go away, and have another big chunk taken out of it, you would have seen that happen during COVID. That would have been one of the biggest drivers to a digital use case.
An excuse to go to digital.
For sure. Yeah, excuse and some legitimate reasons. But there were things there, and you didn't see that. You actually saw growth. Again, because of and again, we say it time and time again, but any instability, any uncertainty, any political, economic unrest, right, leads to increases in cash use, and there's plenty of that in the world right now. So it's not like there's the factors are still pushing towards increased cash. So anyway,
the experience changed, but the methods stay the same, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. It's interesting because, as from the payment side, just kind of to complement what you were saying, is there's a study done in Spain, of all places, and Mark Lowers was told us the story, that Burger King, of all places in Spain, stopped accepting cash, right? It said, hey, no more cash, digital payments, that's it. Well, that's all well and fine, but the number was 16% loss of revenue. So the people that buy the burgers and fries and shakes and all that kind of good stuff, 16%, if not more, traditionally do it in cash. So that didn't last long. So they quickly returned to the, guess what, guys? Now we're accepting cash. So I'm just curious, is the experience with what happens in Europe with all the different countries and how they all work very independently and very differently. most of them accepting the same euro as a method of payment. I'm just curious of how that's going to translate, and
yeah, we had a panel too about kind of the requirement to accept cash and that sort of stuff. And there's work going on in the euro system to put out rules that require cash is the euro is a legal tender, right? So as that, you must accept it. And I was moderating that panel, and I tried to push a little bit on, well, great, it's great to say that, but what do you do when somebody doesn't accept it? Like, what do you do?
Or else,
or else, who's enforcing that? Are you calling the cops? Are you what happens?
Is that federal? Is that state?
And there's no good answer to the enforcement piece. I think we've seen that a bit in the U.S. as well, but it's.
Well, you've seen companies like, what is it? Is it Sweet Greens? Is that the name of the restaurant? They came out no cash, right, system wide, but they accept cash now.
Yeah. Well, it's the same example as Burger King, and I mean, I think we've seen it. You've seen it at various Starbucks too. There'll be a Starbucks, that says no, I'm not going to take any cash for whatever reason, and then the Starbucks 3 blocks down still takes cash, and then everybody goes to the Starbucks 3 blocks down, and then sooner or later, that initial Starbucks says, "Yeah, you know what? Maybe I'll."
It's confusing.
Maybe cash is okay.
And that's from a user standpoint. It's a confusing market, that's for sure.
Yeah. But I think the other interesting thing that seems to be happening differently in the U.S. than in some of the European areas that we were talking with on that panel too was, here, there's the market is kind of, I don't want to say it's pushing towards cash use, but it's recognizing the pricing differences, right, in digital and using cards versus cash, where you'll have an establishment say, oh, you want to use a card, that's fine, I'll take your card, but I'm going to charge you 3% or whatever on top transaction fee for that. Whereas it seemed that is definitely not happening in a lot of the European contexts, and it's almost reverse, where it's no, card might be cheaper, and there might be a fee if you go down the cash road, which is just interesting ways of looking at it. And I think it is really the market in these different countries, and with the different cultures, trying to figure out how to incent different things.
Yeah, I mean, I had the oil changed in my car, went to pick it up, and they said, if you want to use a credit card, it's 3% on, add 3%. It's like, well, I'm not going to do that. Here's my debit card, right?
Yeah.
It's money's money. So I understand. Well, cool.
Yeah. So that's what was happening there. We ran the digital currency conference along with it. A lot of talk there on, faster payments rolling out more and more, so more ways to conduct payments faster, tokenization, and how tokenization is evolving. Again, more of a shift, a bit of a shift away from CBDCs and more into stablecoins right now, trying to let the commercial market push on the stablecoin front. Maybe where the central banks have the CBDCs as kind of a backstop, but let the market and the commercial banks move down the deposit token and stablecoin route and see what happens there. And then frauds and scams, a big discussion there always on how different technologies are making not just frauds and scams more sophisticated and harder, but also how the new technologies can be used to identify them at a systemic level and do better jobs catching the frauds and scams. And then offline, of course, continues to be a big discussion in those about how robust the different solutions are in an offline situation, and for how long, and how much risk folks want to take in that environment. So really good discussions there, and a view of how the world is starting to think a little differently on the digital front too.
Yeah,
but yeah, so that was good. Meanwhile, I think you've done some work and had some discussions with the Consumer Choice Coalition or
the
cash. Payments Choice.
Payments Choice Coalition. So
there we go.
Was fortunate enough to have a meeting on Capitol Hill with three very distinguished Congress people, trying to gain support for this bill as it goes through and trying to design it in the right way, right? And the ultimate goal of this is so that people have a choice in their method of payment. It's an interesting topic because you think like, of course, why wouldn't you have a choice? It's on every note. It's for all debts, legal and blah blah blah. It's legal tender, but then you still have these that are fighting against it. Not saying they're kind of being lobbied by Visa, MasterCard. I'm not saying that, but they have obviously vested interest. That the one thing that really of the capacity that was in the room that had conversations along with their staffers and appropriate people. The one element that I think a lot of people are forgetting is, and this is, I'm not a doomsday prepper, never have been, never will be, but there is the event, the contingency event, more so than hurricane. It's easy to talk about hurricanes, right? Hurricanes is a typical event, doesn't necessarily drive an economy. However, when you look at it from a national security standpoint, what happens when, and they talk about, the South Korean EMP bomb, right? It gets dropped on a place, kills the satellites, zaps out all the power, the grid goes down, all that kind of bad stuff. That's a longer term assessment that affects an economy, then turns into a global economy. If you can't accept a payment for your utility bill, if you can't accept a payment for your mortgage, that kind of stuff, that if you write a check, even the most simplest of facts, what happens to cash in that environment? It's, then a generator, to run your house goes from $500 to $5,000. And there's just a very interesting arena to have the people that were there. What I thought was very interesting was that the staffers that were there that attended us with the Congress people is that they're obviously very young, right? They work really hard. I mean, their hours are impossible, right? They do an amazing job at what they do. They're very ambitious and very, very eager. But then when they never really thought of cash as a problem,
Sure.
They're not necessarily tap and go, but they understand that, like, hey, this has a relevancy within the environment. So to hear how they think of physical currency and cash, it was just a very interesting outlook. Kind of supported, a little bit about, what my daughter and I talked about on the last podcast that came out last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. But it was just an interesting arena to have this conversation. So, the idea of the Payments Coalition is really or Payment Choice is really to drive followership, and the attendees are CEOs of large organizations that are out there that kind of support this to help others understand the value of it, right? And the mission of it is very, very, very thoughtful is probably a good way to look at it. Very elegant in some other ways that, it's got to be written in the same way, or the correct way. So it was great to hear others give advice on, hey, make sure that you use the right people to support it. You don't want someone far too left or far too right to be the one to represent it, to opine on it, because then, it may have the greatest language in the world, but the person representing it may be the wrong person. So you won't get the attention. So it was fantastic to hear how the government system works, as we all know, but to understand that this is an important, relevant area. So again, it's such a great opportunity. And on the first of May, there's another summit coming through. I believe it's in September, to where everyone, CEOs of major organizations will get in a room and we'll, have dinner and talk this through and have proper sponsorship. And it's a great way to kind of promote the use of cash, the Americans' freedom. And I'll tell you that some of the congressmen that we spoke with, they were very concerned about their constituencies, in the towns that they represent. They may have a lot of unbanked, right? So they think of the Burger King kind of scenario where you can go in, get a reasonably affordable meal for your family because you may have multiple jobs. So that is their, not to say grocery store, but you know, if you don't grow your own food, food's expensive, right? And it's getting more expensive. So they look at like, oh, what happens if my constituency, the people that voted for me, now they can't spend money to buy food. They can't spend cash to pay their utility bills. So that was a big deal. So that's one of those another, kind of eye-opening events. It was actually just great to hear other people talk about other experiences, that are located in regional parts of the world or the country. And then to also hear about, how New York just kind of made their new statement of, nope, we're going to accept cash, but they put limits on what, some of the cash usage could be if it's, I can't remember if it's $500 or $1,000, but where companies have to accept cash.
Yeah.
So which raises the other question is, so this is a state decision or this is a federal decision, and how is that appropriateness going to be? Then, because I think of it as like when cannabis started coming online, how each local municipality and states did several things different. So now you've got a harlequin of all these different rules and regulations instead of one at the federal level, because I think the federal level is, nope, it's illegal, period, which is fine. But then when you look at how could this pop up things of, well, this county in this one state says, no, we're going to do it this way, but the state surrounding it says we're going to do cash usage a different way, and then populate that times 50 times how many ever inside that, and it could be too tangled to unweave, right? To put regulation and stability on. So again, it was just a great event. It was great to attend in our nation's capital, which is always a great place. And I think you and I are both fortunate enough to live close enough to visit, and we still admire it when we go in and get to see it work.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, I mean, it's a great point, and is I think we made the point a couple episodes ago when we were talking about some of the armor carrier regulations and may have been cannabis at the time, but state to state variations and in different rules and all that sort of stuff. It's a patchwork that's crazy, and if consumers have to start thinking about that in terms of where they can and cannot spend cash and how they can pay,
right?
It's one thing for a business to have to think about it. Okay, it kind of goes with the territory if you want to say it, but if it's just a consumer traveling across state lines and they can pay with cash here and they can't pay with cash there,
right?
It's different.
I think of it like if a person, and I'll pick a random place, Memphis, Tennessee. Don't ask me why. I went somewhere middle of the country, close enough, right? If a person that works and they get paid cash for their job, and they want to take their kids to Disneyland, so they go to Florida, but inside Disneyland, they only accept mobile payments. Then you have a person that doesn't have a bank account, only has cash. How are they going to be able to enjoy that opportunity with their children? And I glamorize it, right, for obvious reasons, but it's true that is an option, and that's unfortunate at best. I mean, I'm sure there's options to go, cashless ATMs. You make deposit, get a debit card to pull out, to pull off of. That's fine, but it's still is that the process to go through that is not easy for those, and it needs to be considered.
It's not easy, and there's the hidden costs with that, where you've got $5 left at the end of your trip on your card. Now, what do you do with it?
It's funny because my wife and I have got it. She's a teacher, and thank God for teachers, right? And so a lot of the times she gets, teacher gifts is in gift cards.
Yeah, for sure.
Teacher appreciation. So we were looking at all these gift cards that we have, like $1.30 left on this one, $2.28 left on this one. And like, well, the people that are making now are the retailers with the extra money that's on the card.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah.
All right. Well, good
cool.
deal.
Well, good. I hope you've enjoyed kind of listening to us blather on here today about some of the more recent exploits that we've had and some different takeaways for those. I think both themes kind of synergize around choice, right? And kind of that seems to be the way it's going, where these different payment modalities are offered as choices to folks, and people get to choose. And it's not, you don't hear as much these days as you did a couple years ago of the electronics are coming for cash and cash is going away. Now it's more, all right, how do we use them together? How can people have a choice for which one to use, and to make sure that they can when they decide they want to, and the system is there to support it.
Well, and it should be designed that way, right?
And designed that way, yeah.
As my dad would always say, do it once, do it right. Done,
yeah.
Right? Never to have to don't have to spend the time to go back and fix something.
Yeah,
So,
there was, yeah, right. And you don't want to, it needs to be intentional as you implement and change systems and have different options. I think the saying out of the UK, right, was you don't want to sleepwalk into a cashless economy, because then you have resiliency issues and other disenfranchised issues for segments of the population. So yeah, all those things come to play.
no, it's all good stuff, and I appreciate it. And it's always great to see you as always.
Likewise.
And even though we live close, we never see each other face to face. But
Very
no,
true.
I appreciate your time, and welcome back to the States, and enjoy leaving again.
Yeah, thank you. And hope everybody enjoyed listening. Please like, subscribe, download. If you want to join us on an episode, reach out to one of us. We're always happy to have guests on. Otherwise, you just have to listen to us talk to each other. So,
Yeah, and share with whomever you can. I appreciate it. We appreciate the sponsorship.
Exactly. All right, everybody, enjoy. We look forward to talking to you next time.
All right. Bye, all. Thank you. See you, Sean.
See you.
Thanks for listening to the Cash News Podcast. We hope you found this episode insightful. Don't forget to like and review us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter, and be sure to visit us at thecashnews.com to stay up to date with the latest on the world of cash. Thanks again for listening to the Cash News Podcast.